Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module, we are going to look at the concept of developmental state as part of the course on social policy. I am Dr. Shivli Kumar, Associate Professor from the School of Social Work in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. The main topics that we are going to be discussing in this particular module are development states and its components, contradictions in the developmental state to developmental welfare state, capabilities approach and developmental state, and a summary of the same. We need to look at the rise of developmental states in the world, and the developmental states, the concept actually evolved by looking at the ways in which East Asian countries were able to become big powers in the economic global world. The ways in which unprecedented development was witnessed across these East Asian countries, despite lower natural and physical endowments, and it has been generally attributed to the presence of strong states, the notion of very strong states within the East Asian communities and countries. Countries such as Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan have been quickly joining the ranks of developed countries within their relentless pursuit of economic development. And that is what the components of a developmental state is, and that's what we are going to talk about in this module. All these countries have a strong foundation of what we call the developmental state, which has been acting as a propeller for these economies. But what is therefore developmental state? How is it different from a developed state? What makes the state a developmental state, and how does it fuel the development in the economies? Let's look at it in this particular module. Developmental state could be defined as a state where the government intimately gets involved in the macro and the microeconomic planning in order to grow the economy. So the focus is the economy, whilst at the same time the growth in this economy is used to developing better lives of the people. So what does it require? A government with a political will and legitimate mandate to perform the required functions, a competent and neutral bureaucracy that ensures implementation of the various programs, which requires a strong education system and efficient set of public sector organizations with little corruption. So there is a strong focus on morality and also being absolutely neutral on there is no understanding of the social status or social stratifiers from which bureaucratic people should be coming in, and it is embedded in the educational system. An institutional process where the bureaucracy and the government engages with each other as stakeholders. So bureaucracy and state work together to ensure that the economy is growing. An established development framework and a comprehensive governance system, a clean, comprehensive governance system to ensure that the program is implemented without any difficulty. So a central function is responsible for the overall coordination. The bureaucratic apparatus is in this case based on a meritocratic bureaucracy. So you have to perform, otherwise you will not get a promotion, is what is conceptualized. And there is little political interference and maximum autonomy for all the qualified bureaucrats to formulate and implement policies and instruments as a developmental state. So the bureaucracy is given a free hand to move ahead, and the state only interacts to ensure implementation of the program. Political parties do not play a significant role in terms of implementation of programs. As Chalmers Johnson says, developmental state requires that politicians reign but bureaucrats rule. Lastly, it is also required that a conceding and actively participating private market player is is required for the state to realize its vision of developmental state. So a developmental state also promotes and propagates private players in the development of a country. So on the one hand, this is the reality. On the other hand, if you look at Japan as an example, there is an existence of small entities with meritorious bureaucrats who are dedicated to identify growing industries and then push some support system to guide their growth, and finally supervise healthy economic competition in these industries to maintain their effectiveness and comparative advantage. So there is a control by the bureaucracy to see that all market players are operating within a given value framework, and also ensure the growth of the country and the economy. There is a non-interfering political system which does not interfere with the bureaucracy and the way it performs, which is focused on performing safety valve function of the state. So in fact, the politicians do not play a very key role in the economies of such countries, while giving a free hand to the bureaucracy to function and to operate in the economy. Adopting market-conforming approaches for state interventions with adequate scope for market players towards contributing towards policies and planning. So, market players are also playing a big role in defining policies and programmatic implementation without misplacing the objective of economic development. Therefore, there are existence of forums to exchange, debate, receive ideas, and give feedback, and periodical revision of tax rebates and alike. So there is a comprehensive process of the developmental state which operates, and there are there is a good participation of the three stakeholders, that is the state, the bureaucracy and the market players, which is consistently done to ensure that economic development does not get hampered within the country. Being in that case, it requires a strong state. So while the politicians may not interfere in the process of decision making of the bureaucracy or the market, but it requires that the state plays a very effective and efficient role to govern the processes of the dialogue and the discussion and policy making that is done within the country. So developmental state with a strong control on the political and economic affairs is therefore deemed as a strong state. It therefore has a characteristics of autonomy that it enjoys from the class interest and plurality of demands from various groups within the society. But at the same time, it also has the political muscles to push forward the policies and programmatic interventions. These are key features of also an authoritarian state without being authoritarian. Being a developmental state is also that it requires an economic orientation rather than what we call as the social and cultural connotation. So the focus is purely economic, and the political dimensions are also focusing on economic growth and economic development, and therefore that contributes towards promotion of well-being of the people of the society. So the say that the political players have, the say that the bureaucrats have, and the say that market players have come together to formulate the authoritarian state. So if people want to participate in these decision making, they are also part of any of these three dimensions within such states. The limited development, therefore, in many ways, the developmental state also moves towards the limited developmental state as economic growth happens and economic transition happens. The limited developmental state could be defined as state having features such as certain segments of the economy remain plainly plan rational, part of the planning process, while the larger part is market rational. It's dictated by the market. The orientation is to develop the orientation of the developmental state is developmental in certain segments, but it's also very reduced, and the regulatory function increases over sectors, but largely it addresses what is emanating from the market relations and the market processes. The primary policy objectives therefore include development and the other goals, and it does not really interfere in the way market functions or market grows. And it moves out of most of the other functions in terms of decision making that is to be done in operation of the market or the workings of the bureaucracy. Most of the states have experienced these transitions, such as Japan, which has transformed from a comprehensive developmental state to limited developmental state in 1970s, while South Korea transformed in 1980s. These transitions were also prelude to dismantling the developmental state by restricting the autonomy of the state towards market forces, which I have already explained earlier. But at the same time, there are contradictions in the developmental state, also because post-Cold War, the notion of socialism and the notion of communism also took a back seat. So, and there was no protectionist regime that is governing most of these countries as well. So, as a part of the world economy, the process of developmental state also got shaken, and there are existing contradictions within this whole context, which is important for us to keep in mind. Dismantling of developmental state to it results in its own contradiction and institutions, because one, there are contradictions within the institutional framework itself, wherein the state nurtures the private sector and aids its growth through subsidies and policies, which in turn encourages private sector to become self-sufficient, but also then questions the existence of state itself to say that it's not required. So there is a contradiction in it, in the institutional process. In its own interest, private sector therefore challenges the state and the ability of the state to manage economic growth. Secondly, the contradiction of autonomy in the development state lies in its own success. For example, the state's very success in building its role as a corporate actor may undermine or undercut its ability to remain autonomous, because it has to respond to what is coming out of the market economy, and that effective intervention may increase the extent to which the state becomes an arena of social conflict itself. It may not be able to address the not so doing well market players. So there is a conflictual position or process that emerges when there is conflicting demands on the state. Development creates new classes full of wealth and power, which in turn demands more independence. When you become independent, when you have adequate wealth, you're also questioning the very existence of the state, and the regulation requires to ensure that all market players are involved. So strengthened classes such as capitalist classes and laborers, which owe their development to the state, start questioning the existence of state itself, and there is a tussle between the labor and the capitalist class, and they don't become allies. In fact, they start having conflicting interests and demands from each other, which in itself questions the existence of the developmental state and questions what the state should be doing to ensure equity and possible redistribution of resources amongst all its citizens. Capitalists and big business owners demand a protectionist government because they want subsidies to ensure profits and safeguard private sectors and insulate them from market failures and global shocks, and also labor disputes, because when there is labor dispute, there is a problem in ensuring deliverables to the market that is demanding those products. On On the other hand, labor advocates for welfare state, demanding that the state should safeguard the rights and welfare of the labor and insulate them against wage and work shocks in the market, that there should be some social security that should be provided for the labor to take care of their basic needs and prevent exploitation by the capitalist class. So the demands in itself between the two are contradicting the presence of the state and creating conflict for the state to take a position as a developmental state in itself. So therefore, developmental to welfare then becomes the next inevitable for most states. With these policies, the departure of the state from development to democracy, it becomes inevitable because there is contestation, there is conflict, and there are mobilizations. So paradoxically, in this case, the degeneration of the developmental state was promulgated by its own success. Both strengthened the aggrieved classes such as the capitalists and the laborers, and both demanded release from the state-driven ecosystem for more autonomy and polarizing demands from the development. So therefore the developmental state's existence being questioned, it transits towards developmental welfare state. So welfare, therefore states are forced to take welfare in their own hands rather than leave it to the market players, and therein comes in the existence of democracy and developmental welfare state. There is a shift therefore towards social welfare policies. The developmental welfare system therefore aims to rectify the flaws that were there earlier with enhanced emphasis on social policies and transition from selective to universal coverage to promote productivism, democratic governance and social investment. For example, in the case of South Korea, the transition to democratization was accompanied with reprioritization of industrial policies, which included foreign policy and welfare as priorities along with economic development. So there was a realization that while there is a need to continue economic development and economic growth, some amount of redistribution through welfare policies to ensure the well-being of the citizens is required. So in that case, the social expenditure became very important, and in South Korea, it became almost 40% of the total government expenditure in the late 1980s as a response to the demands generated both by the labor class as well as the capitalist class. However, these policies again are getting overturned with the adoption of structural adjustment programs post-East Asian crisis. So now again there is a problem with the developmental welfare state, with liberalization, privatization, globalization, which contribute to the transition towards again limited developmental statehood to neoliberal statehood, wherein now state again is being questioned as a welfare provider because capitalist class is becoming again more powerful in the globalized economy. So what could be the ways into reconciling this contradiction? Perhaps the capabilities approach has some answers to this particular phenomena. Developmental state owed its success to its single-minded priority of economic development in policy planning, which incidentally also created and contributed to its fall in the later stages. A capability-enhancing state focuses on developing skills and abilities of citizens at the individual level, along with its priority of boosting the economy, which will have promising results and wider acceptance amongst its citizens. This would work very well to ensure inclusive policies, to ensure the participants of divergent groups in a nation building exercise. This would also mean more engagement of state in effective delivery of various welfare programs like healthcare, education services, skill upgradation, along with economical public transport, etc. So enhancing the capabilities of individuals would perhaps ensure that the pathway of economic development is cleared for further nation building and ensuring equity and equality within the society in terms of resources and access to resources. So perhaps the capabilities approach has some answers to this process of addressing the fall of developmental state and developmental welfare state and responding to globalization and liberalization processes. Therefore, capabilities approach in that sense also brings in the dimension of human development index and how other indicators of welfare and well-being can be accounted for in the economy of a country. So not necessarily only looking at income and income generation as a way of measuring the well-being of a particular society. It brings in indicators of health, it brings in indicators of educational outcomes, it brings in the format of gender equality within a country context. It also brings in the dimension of being able to pursue certain inherent talents and skills to contribute to the economy as well. And when these dimensions are made part of the inclusive policies, then there is a possibility of addressing the conflict that developmental states have brought in through the ways in which it has allowed market economy to flourish on its own. In fact, capabilities approach can also address the ways in which market economies and private players can define and provision services in what we call as public-private partnership in the Indian context, wherein while there are regulatory mechanisms within the constitutional framework to ensure equity and equality and reach to the marginalized section, but at the same time the market players also provision for welfare for the people in the country and ensure welfare of the different divergent citizens who would require a different format of welfare at different points. So this whole move to ensure that 2% of every corporate entity should be put in the corporate social responsibility is an opportunity for developmental state and welfare state to ensure that well-being of the society is provisioned for. And this would also enhance the engagement of the state in effective delivery of welfare programs to different citizens in the country. So in summary, in this module, what we really looked at was the developmental states of Japan, Korea and Singapore. And why we looked at it also is often they are held up as examples for the Indian welfare state to look at and possibly engage with and also replicate the same in the country. So while we have also seen that the developmental state of these countries are today besetted and buffeted by the globalization processes, we need to also look at what were the opportunities and what were the ways in which development was done is in these countries. The opportunity that gets presented in this context is of course adopting the capabilities approach for social policy in this current scenario of globalization and privatization. Perhaps the developmental states of Japan, Korea and Singapore also need to look at this approach and see how they can actually look at the ways in which globalization is creating difficulties for the state provisioning of public policy. And such diversification in policy priorities will also resolve the pitfalls of the developmental state obsessed with the objective of only economic development. The comprehensive development plan of the state will diminish the need for liberal approach, which relies heavily on the market forces and private sectors, but also bring in the role of the state more so as a socialist regime, and ensure that the welfare remains as a discourse within the developmental state of 21st century, and the outcome would probably be more of equitable redistribution of resources for all its citizens, and also development of nations and citizens within the world order. So how do we therefore look at a futuristic shape of the developmental state would be perhaps to see that using the capabilities approach, how does welfare get shaped? How does the role of the state become more effective? To understand the state is given should be something as not just as a regulatory body, but also as a provisioning body. So somewhere state needs to play a role between the market forces and the demands of its citizenship. So collectivization of and organizing of the marginalized is a key aspect which should be kept in mind by the state, allowing for discourse and dialogue between the market and the citizens is another element which the capabilities approach actually advises and advocates for. Because then when one is evolving indicators for development or welfare and public policy provisioning, one is also looking at what people have to say in terms of their well-being, what is the ways in which marginalization is working out in different contexts for different people and different individuals within the society. When the indicators are developed around that, then public policy becomes more effective, and this public policy has to be implemented by the state. The accepting state as a given continues to remain relevant in most developmental states as well as developed economies, because globalization and liberalization does not have the human rights discourse and the human development discourse. It's only the capabilities approach which brings in this dimension and makes the state relevant and significant in people's lives. Some of the references that you may want to look at is also The Idea of Justice by Amartya Sen. Look at the book on insecurity and welfare regimes in Asia, Africa and Latin America, which covers these diverse differential experiences of the Asian countries and brings out the continuous process of development that these states have been moving forward, recognizing it that development is not a given, but development is a discourse. So this particular book is very important. And of course, if you want to look at the various formats of welfare states, Gosta Esping Anderson's book brings that out in its 3 political economies of welfare state. So you may want to look at it. Thank you.